Are you ever worried about writing a large amount of text in a short amount of time? Then you need to listen to A.J. Mack, author of the book The Gem State Seige. He wrote the entire thing during NaNoWriMo of 2020, and he is our guest today on Writing in the Tiny House. Hello, 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 and welcome to the show. Welcome back to the show. I am Devin Davis, your host, and I am the guy living in a tiny house to show you all of the different ways, regardless of how busy you are, that you can write that book. We focus mainly on fiction, at least the majority of these episodes. Today we have a person that I have been so excited to get to know. His name is A.J. Mack. His first name is actually Aaron. And it's not in the interview, so I get to share a little tidbit before we play the interview. I actually met Aaron on a Facebook group looking for a critique partner. I had no idea what he had done. I had no idea his story or the process that he had taken to write this thing, but we exchanged first chapters many, many months ago, and he critiqued my first chapter. I critiqued his first chapter. It was a great experience. And then, like a couple months later, I realized that his book was being released and was in print. So today we have A.J. Mack, author of the book The Gem State Seige, to share his entire story with us.
I started off writing a completely different novel that I said I was going to release first, but then I thought about the options of like Permafree books and like starting content because I just wanted to kind of roll into something that was a little bit bigger of a project than the one that I released first. And it took me about 10 years to actually write that novel, like rewriting and constantly revising and all of that. The final draft of that book, it took me about 9 months to do 100,000 words, I think. And I was just like, okay, I need to write it a little bit faster. If I have this goal of doing all of these books and all of this story, this whole sci-fi universe that I've created in my head, I might want to write a little bit faster. So NaNoWriMo came along. I found it on Facebook, found a lot of groups on Facebook talking about writing 50,000 words in a month. And I was like, okay, that's a challenge. I'm going to take it. I don't know if I can do it, but I'm going to try. So October 31st, I was just like, kind of like at my computer, 11:59, like a runner at a Olympic track meet. 12 o'clock hit, and I just started going. It took me about 20 days, 21 days, I think, to get to 50,000 words, but I did it. And I proved to myself that I actually could write faster.
NaNoWriMo, though it calls itself a competition, is more like a big push to get people to start writing. No one is looking over your shoulder. You don't submit your progress to anyone, but it's just a month-long marathon in the spirit of writing, and it is celebrated by everyone. When Aaron got in the thick of it, he had some big realizations about his own writing process.
I like being a pantser for the most part, doing Prep-Tober, what they call it, when you're preparing for NaNoWriMo. I took some time out and wrote like a whole outline. I started setting up my writing space and I bought Scrivener and I wrote out, and it took me about a day or so to write this entire like outline of what I was going to do. And about chapter 2, I was like, screw the outline. Yeah, yeah.
He wrote for hours every day. Like he said, it took him 21 days to get his first draft completed. 3 weeks. And as you might imagine, it took a toll on his social life.
I don't think I talked to my girlfriend much during that time. I was working night shift at my full-time job. And what I would do was I would work 5 o'clock p.m. to about 4 o'clock a.m. was my schedule. And I would spend as much time as I possibly could while I was working, which wasn't much, writing. And when I was at home, I would wake up early, still wake up early about 11 o'clock, and I would write until I go to work. So I was pretty much at my computer the entire time.
Because he wasn't an experienced writer, at first he didn't know how to go about self edits and critique partners at all. This is how he handled it.
And I sat on the manuscript for about a month and a half, maybe. And like there were a lot of people saying that if you write something in NaNoWriMo, then it should at least be a year out before you actually start like thinking about publishing. But I was determined. I was determined to get some feedback on it. And I went to Facebook groups and like a bunch of critique groups, and I start querying for some people to give me some feedback on the book. And that was my start into editing that rough draft and submitting that rough draft to, and seeing if there was a actual concept for me to even publish a book.
And a few short months later, he had the Gem State Seige in print.
It's about Tawny Sims, a world-renowned conspiracy theorist who finds herself in the middle of a cataclysmic event in her hometown of Idaho Falls when what seems like a natural disaster, the mysterious organization that uses the tragedy as fuel to start a mass extermination disguised as a pandemic. Tawny has to find her way to stop the monstrous billionaire responsible while keeping her and her 5-year-old son safe.
So, this book required some research, not only about concepts, but about geography. The story takes place in Idaho Falls, and Aaron doesn't even live there.
The pantser and me decided to find somewhere where geysers would make sense for the relic that I used in the book. So Yellowstone National Park was was nearby. I have a fascination with, and this is going to sound horrible, but I have a fascination with like end of the world kind of cataclysmic movies like that, like movies like 2012 and Water Worlds, things like that, just kind of like interest me. So the apocalyptic trope, I feel like that's my thing. That's what interests me. It's a lot of build up to what I'm doing in the sci-fi universe that I'm creating and the world that I'm putting together. And that just happened to be one of the starting points of the world.
So, I asked him what got him interested in books and science fiction in the first place.
A lot of fan fiction. I used to do a lot of sketches growing up and drawing my own comic books. Specifically, when I was younger, it was a show called Dragon Ball Z that, for whatever reason, in America did not want to continue past a certain saga. So I started drawing my own. And that trend never left. Like I fell in love with writing and coming up with my own ideas, and I felt comfortable like growing up as an introvert, I felt comfortable just writing my own reality opposed to living in the real reality, I guess. And it just kind of worked for me.
All of us, as writers, face roadblocks and other struggles, and sometimes we have self doubt.
I struggled with the belief that I could even write that fast, considering that I've just been sitting on a bunch of ideas for 10 years before I actually decided to publish a novel. For any aspiring author that wants to write, join a community like NaNoWriMo, where people are having the same challenges.
Not only is Aaron cranking out books, but he and his friends also do a podcast.
My podcast is called the Dirty Trunk Podcast, and we like to say that that's where the elephant is always welcome. And we talk about the uncomfortable conversations about growth and building your mindset as an entrepreneur. They come out every Tuesday. And the last episode, we discussed your environment and how it shapes your future as an adult.
By the time this episode airs, the Dirty Trunk podcast will have reached more than 100 episodes.
For anybody who's listening to this episode here, if you have the goal or the dream to be a published author, do it. You can listen to this podcast, and everybody who joins Mr. Devin on this journey of being a guest on this awesome podcast that he has here in this platform. You can listen to every single one of them talk about their dreams, their goals of how to start and how they started. But it will not be possible for you unless you actually put pen to paper and do it. Do not let fear get in the way of your goals and your dreams.
A special thanks to Aaron, author name AJ Mack, for joining me today on Writing in the Tiny House. He is working hard on the next several books of his series, and I am excited to see when those are going to come out. If you are interested in ordering or reading the Gem State Seige by AJ Mack, follow the link in the show notes and it'll get you there. And that is it for today. Thank you so much for my patrons. Without them, this show cannot be possible. If you wish to become a patron, go to patreon.com/writinginthetinyhouse. You can get early access to these episodes. You can get an additional episode, and you can get quality time with me over our exclusive chat rooms on Discord. Follow me on Instagram. My handle is @author Devin Davis, and on Twitter, my handle is @author Devin D. Thank you so much for listening. We will see you next week, and have fun writing.